Hey friends, welcome to day 9 of our 31 days of watercolor practice for World Watercolor Month. Today we are going to be talking about using a light source in your paintings and where to place shadows based on that light source. So let's jump in and get started. Okay friends, today we are on day 9 and today we are talking about light source and how it affects shadows and shading in your paintings. So today I'm going to do a little demonstration. We're going to be painting trees. Now I don't want to get too much into how to paint trees exactly. We're going to be doing a little bit more of that later, but I do want to show you how choosing your light source, which would be the sun in a painting, affects where you place the shadows. So if you're looking at a reference photo, say you're copying from a reference photo, you might already have the light source in the picture and that will determine where the shadows are and you can just copy from a reference photo. But if you're creating your own painting, your own landscape painting, you're going to want to decide where your light source is coming from because that will help you add depth and shadows to your painting. So today I'm going to give you a quick little lesson on that. Now to start, I'm going to take some yellow and I'm going to create a little sun here. This is going to be the light source for our demonstration. A beautiful, professional looking sun. Okay. And then I'm going to draw 3 examples of trees. Now they're not going to be amazing trees. They're just going to be simple trees. So the first one might be kind of like this tall, you can even do just like regular shapes, like a cone shape. Okay, and it will just be a little jagged. This one may be a bit more flat, like so, and maybe this one is a bit more rounded, like a ball. And all of them have little tree trunks. I tend to tell people to draw smaller, thinner tree trunks. It looks a little bit more realistic than like a big tree trunk. I feel like that looks very, elementary school looking. So try and make your trunks smaller, and then you can have little branches that kind of come off of it if you want. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, okay? So there is our quick little trees. So then you're gonna take your pencil and you're gonna draw a little arrow coming from your light source and where it would hit your trees. This is gonna give you an idea of where you're gonna place your shadows, because if the light is hitting the tree on this side, you're gonna have shadows over here. If it's hitting the top of this tree, the highlight is going to be up here, the shadows are going to be underneath. If it's hitting it at this angle, it kind of goes out like that. Actually, you could even do that to make it a little bit better. This makes a bit more sense. There we go. That gives you a better visual. And that is kind of where the light source is going to be hitting each tree. So when we're creating our trees, we always want to work light to dark. That's how you work with watercolor. So we want to lay down our highlights first, our lightest color. So I'm going to pick a really light green, which is kind of like this leaf green, but it's like super light. Create a very light wash, so it's more water than paint. And I'm going to go over this entire tree. I'm going to do this one using the wet on wet technique to show you kind of the differences of how you can do these trees. So I'm going to continue to work on this while it's still wet. So here's our highlighted area. It's hitting the tree here. I'm now going to pick a mid-tone green, which is kind of like this olive green. And while it's still wet, I'm just going to tap kind of like the shadowy area, the opposite side of where the highlight is, to create that mid-tone. Then, while it's still wet, I'm going to find a darker green, and I'm going to finally add my shadow. So it's on the opposite side of the highlight. Now this is wet on wet, so it's all kind of blending and bleeding together. And if you want to go in with some deeper shadow, remember we talked about color mixing. To get a darker green, I might add a little bit of red to it. Get an even deeper green for some deeper shadows. You can add that underneath if you like. Now also, there are different kind of layers to trees. They stick out. It's not just one solid thing where it's going to go light, medium, dark, right? There might be branches kind of sticking out forward. So you might even get some highlighted areas in the middle here. So maybe you want to add some shadow to show that there would be a highlighted area here. You need a shadow behind it, okay? Little things like that are really going to help. So that's kind of the wet on wet for this tree. Now I'm going to show you in different layers doing kind of like a wet on dry. So again, we're starting with our lightest color, our highlight color. We're going to go over the whole thing like so. And I'm just going to grab my green a little bit more and I'm just going to do some dots to make it a little bit more textured. Now we're going to let that completely dry. So while that's drying, let's do this one as well. And again, I'm using my highlight color. You know what? Actually, let's do a different color tree. Let's do a fall tree. Maybe this is like a yellowy orange tree. Okay. It's a birch tree. It's just starting to turn. So we have our highlight color. We're going to do the same kind of wet on wet again while we're waiting for this to dry. So we have our highlight color. We're going to go in with our mid-tone, so maybe more of an orangey. Again, that sun is hitting right here. We're going to try and grab our mid-tone and bring it over here. Even this yellow might be a bit too light. You could always lift. Remember our lifting technique? To make it lighter, I should have started out a lot lighter. Okay, grab our little orange again. Do our mid-tones. The shadow should be on the opposite side. I'm going to grab some yellow ochre because that's kind of like a nice mid color as well. Okay, again, maybe there's some branches that are sticking out too. So maybe there is a highlight here that's kind of sticking out that would touch the sun. Just make sure you put your shadow behind it. And then finally, I'm going to grab like a burnt sienna kind of color for the shadow, a little bit more. Okay, and I'm just going to add, I also have to learn the colors that are in this palette. This isn't one that I use all the time, so I don't know. Okay, here's my shadow. Give this tree some layers like that, and see how that works. Okay, so now let's make sure that this is completely dry before we continue. Okay, so this one's dry now. Now we can do our second layer. Again, getting that mid-tone. This is going to give a different look because when we do wet on dry, you get these very detailed kind of strokes, right? You can see each dot. I'm just going to do it all over the back part here, keeping that part the lightest. And then I'm going to let this section dry. Now, because we did wet on wet here does not mean that we have to keep it wet on wet. If you want to add more texture to your painting, you can wait for it to dry and do this kind of look to it. Just grab your light highlight color again, same color, and just add some texture over top. Okay. Add that extra layer, totally up to you. Like you don't have to just stop there. So many ways you can do trees, okay? But really what's going to make it pop are those different values and hues of the green to give those shadows and depth. This one's just wet on wet. Let's just leave that one just to show you wet on wet and wet on dry, just wet on dry, and then just wet on wet. Okay, let's make sure that those are dry before we continue. Okay, and then for the final layer of this one, just getting that darkest green at the bottom here. Okay, and it shows you that depth you can create just using different layers. Okay, then obviously all of these need a tree trunk. So you're going to take a brown. Again, make sure you're doing the lightest value to start because the light source also affects the tree trunk and the branches. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over that before we end. So I'm just doing my light brown. Now, This sun may not hit here, but it might hit down there. So we're gonna add a little bit of darkness on the left side and kind of at the top. And that also creates a lot of depth. Look at that, just like the tiniest little bit of shadow. This one, we might see most of the shadow at the top, right underneath the body of the tree. Maybe even all the way down to the trunk, to the bottom, okay? Because most of that's being covered. And then this one, I would put the shadow on this side, like so. And then final lesson, the ground underneath is also going to be affected. I'm just gonna do a quick little thing of grass here. Really trying not to make this go over 10 minutes, but I'm getting a little in depth here. I'm gonna try and be better, okay. Again, it affects where the shadows are in the grass. I'm just gonna grab a darker green here. It's hitting here, so you're gonna have the shadow from the tree on this side. It's hitting right underneath, the shadow's gonna be right under. Hitting on this side, the shadow will be on this side. Okay, so I hope that made a lot of sense to you. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, but that is how you create depth and shadow using a light source in your painting. Thank you all so much for watching, and tomorrow I will actually be going live for day 10. Make sure to check the description below for the time that I will be going live, and I will see you there. Bye guys.